When you give people expectations and those people accept those expectations, all of a sudden things change.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Welcome back, one and all, to the Appraiser Coach Podcast. I am Dustin Harris. I'm your host, and I'm the Appraiser Coach. We're working through the principles of prosperity the last couple of weeks, and we are on to principle of prosperity number 9. And this principle is an interesting principle. It's called People Expand Work to Fit Time. What does that mean? Well, we're going to talk about it, but I want to pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by ANOW software. ANOW, of course, is the software that I use each and every day to manage my appraisal office. You should be as well. It's anow.com, ANOW.com. Well, folks, this one is sometimes called the Parkinson's principle, probably because it's named after somebody with the last name Parkinson, not the disease, but someone else. The Parkinson's principle basically says this, that people will expand work or contract work, as the case may be, but they will expand work to fit the time allotted. Let me explain it very, very briefly. This is not an exact principle, just like most of these are not. You can find exceptions to all of these rules. These are general principles to live by with multiple exceptions. Okay, as long as we keep that in mind as we go through this process, we will be much happier, understanding that in general these fit. In general, these are true, but you can always find exceptions to this rule. But generally, the truth in this is, and social science would back this up, and Parkinson, as a researcher, has lots of evidence on his side on this particular principle, and that is that we as human beings will expand or contract our work to fit the time allotted. Basically, it looks like this. Let's say you have an 8-hour workday to accomplish 5 tasks. What Parkinson found that most employees and business owners and people in general will take 8 hours to complete 5 tasks. Now, I know that doesn't sound groundbreaking, but stick with me. So the idea that you have 8 hours, 5 tasks, it will take you 8 hours to complete those 5 tasks. What if that time was now cut down to 6 hours? You've got 6 hours to complete those 5 tasks. Well, guess what? Lo and behold, Parkinson found that most workers, most people, will get all 5 tasks done in, you named it, 6 hours. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, yeah, of course, they're going to get it done, but it's not going to be to the same quality. That may be true in some circumstances, but actually if you read Parkinson's research, you'll find that it actually is not true in most cases. Now, there are exceptions, right? Let's say that you take those same 5 tasks and you now say, okay, you've got 20 minutes to complete it, right? There's a breaking point. At some point, there's enough time to accomplish tasks and then there's too much or too little time. And you kind of have to find that natural balance. But this idea that in general, if you've got that time, let's say you could accomplish it in 6 hours and do just as well as accomplishing it in 8 hours, you're going to expand that time to fit the time that's allotted to you. So if it's 6 hours, you'll do basically the same quality work in 6 hours as you would in 8 hours for the same amount of work. I know, sounds crazy, but that's the Parkinson's principle. You know what else sounds crazy? Switching whatever you're using right now to keep track of each and every order in your arsenal to ANOW software. Folks, that's crazy, right? I did it about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was crazy. And I guarantee I got all kinds of kickback from my office. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to go down that road. They went down kicking and screaming, and so did I. And then I was so glad I did. Folks, ANOW software will absolutely change the way that you do business as an appraiser, as a business owner. It will change the way that you look at your business. You'll be able to keep track of absolutely everything that goes on in your office. Check them out. Go to anow.com. It's anow.com. Again, anow.com. Welcome back to the program, everybody. We're working through the principles of prosperity. Today, principle number 9. Principle number 9 is the Parkinson's principle. It is that people expand or contract work to fit the time allotted. Now, how does this help us in business? How does this help us as an appraiser? How does this help us as a business owner? Well, let me give you one example. As a sole entrepreneur, as a sole office, as somebody who's out doing your own inspections, choosing your own comps, making your own adjustments, everything else, you, even though you are not given an allotted time to necessarily be at that appointment, you already subconsciously have in mind what that time should be. And that might change as you drive up to the property. Meaning you might have said to yourself, you know what, I can do this appraisal inspection in about 45 minutes. And then you pull up and you go, oh, okay, maybe an hour, right? This is a little bigger or a little more complicated than I had anticipated. And that's fine. The point is you're walking into that appointment with a preconceived, even subconscious idea of how long it's going to take you to do that appraisal. And guess what? You'll find if you kept track, especially if you could keep track subconsciously, which is obviously impossible to do on your own. But if you could, Parkinson's principle would say, you know what, you're going to expand or contract that time to fit whatever subconsciously you think you have time to do. With your employees, you give them 8 hours and you give them several tasks to accomplish in those 8 hours, and you will find that inevitably they will expand or contract based on your needs. Now, let me give you an actual real-life example of how this has affected me in my business. In fact, just this morning. Recently, I was asked by one of my VAs for a raise, and I do not give raises based on time. This particular VA came to me and she said, I've been working for you now for a year and I'm hoping that I could get a raise. My answer was, I love you much. You're wonderful. Keep doing your hard work, but I don't give raises based on time. I give raises based on merit. Now, if you can show me where your value has increased over the last year, I would love to consider a raise for you. So we went through this process of keeping track of her time and keeping track of what she's doing. And one of the things that we used was a tool out there called Toggle, Toggl. There's no E at the end. Toggle. It's free. It's online. You have an opportunity to keep track of each and everything that you do in your business, in your tasks, and you can keep track of how much time it takes you to do things. Now, she has a particular job in my office to do, let's just hypothetically say that she's doing comps. Probably because she's doing comps. But hypothetically, let's say that she's doing comps, meaning she's not choosing comps, but she's putting them in the grid. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, Dustin, what about Data Master? I thought that you use Data. I do. The problem is I have 5 MLSs and Data Master only works on 2 of them. So unfortunately, I still have to do the old-fashioned enter them in manually, and this is what her job is. Now, we have found in my office that it takes about a minute per comp. Okay, more or less. Now that's an average, but about a minute per comp. So if you've got 6 comps to put in, it takes about 6 minutes to transfer it from the MLS sheet into total. And that's her job. And what we find is when I asked her to send me Toggle, I found that it was taking her about 2.5 minutes per comp. And I said to her, I would love to consider you for a raise, but remember that the goal, the milepost, is about 1 minute per comp. Now we went back and forth as to what that meant. I think that the education happened. And guess what? Guess what? She's going to do it. Now, I don't have the end of the story yet because that was the conversation that I had with her this morning, but I guarantee things will change. Why? Because I've seen it over and over and over again. When you give people expectations and those people accept those expectations, all of a sudden things change. And it doesn't even happen consciously. The Parkinson's principle works. People expand work to fit time. Talked a little bit about my VA earlier, folks. If you're interested in a VA, a virtual assistant in your office helping you to accomplish more, I did a whole webinar on virtual assistants, how to find them, how to train them, how to manage them. It's a great webinar. You can find it on my website at theappraisercoach.com/products. Again, theappraisercoach.com/products.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
When you give people expectations and they accept those expectations, sorry, editor.